Hello and welcome to the News OK Varsity Podcast. I'm Scott Wright of the Oklahoman, joined by Jacob Unruh. High school football is all around, Jacob, right now. We're ready to get going. We've got week 1 coming up. Week 0 is behind us. We've got some OSSAA stuff to talk about here in a little bit, but let's start with week 0. We've got a special guest on the line, Brad Ballard from Tuttle. Jacob, you were out there at that ball game. Great way to start the season.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The atmosphere was great. Tuttle won 31-14, ending Davis's 30-game win streak. Like I said, we're going to be joined by Coach Brad Ballard, who's in his second year at Tuttle. Brad, how's it going today?
We're doing well. How are you guys today?
Having a blast, man.
Hey, the other night, one thing really stood out to me. You know, it was the first week 0 game. You guys got a big win, but the atmosphere. I had never been to Tuttle, I'll admit, for a game. I've written plenty of stories about you guys, but never covered a live game there. I've only been on the road. But the atmosphere, 2 or 3 deep, trucks everywhere. The stands were full at 6:30. What was that like?
It was really a pretty magical night for us. It's one of those nights you hope that every young man gets to experience as far as players go. That's a playoff atmosphere. It's a big game. It's 2 great and storied traditions. So our community came out and supported. Davis had a great following. The fans were great. Everyone supported, and it was wonderful. Just an awesome night. The weather was perfect, and a pretty clean played football game. So.
How does it feel to get that win in the first ever week 0 and all the differences with it?
Oh, it was great. The kids worked really hard. We've been preparing. You put a lot of work into the first one, no matter what week it is. But we really thought we took care of our business. Our conditioning was good, and that's one thing I always worry about there on, losing a week. So I felt like we were in good shape. Everything went well. We stayed pretty healthy. So we're happy with the outcome. Anytime you can beat Davis, we feel like it's a good day.
Hey, Coach, there were, 20 or so games across the state this year in the first ever chance that people had to play in week 0. Do you think this is going to grow in popularity as we go forward?
I really do. And I think probably as much out of necessity as anything for the lower classes, even more so than us, just because of the odd numbers in the districts and just giving those guys some flexibility and having 11 weeks to schedule 10 games. It's a huge help for us. And the Oklahoma Football Coaches Association has lobbied for that thing for a while. So to actually see it in use and us to benefit from it, it was a great night. And I think it'll grow, and I think it'll be a very popular thing.
The idea that you have a one less scrimmage, how did that change things?
Our biggest change probably was usually you use that week of your second scrimmage to just polish things up. You do a lot of install your first week, and then that second week you're cleaning things up, really working a lot on special teams. So to cut down on some of the time we've spent on special teams, which we'll have to do a better job with next year. But that's probably the biggest loss we had, was just that other week to really clean things up, and of course another week of conditioning. But then we made some changes in our schedule in the first week, and we felt real good about it. Feel good about where the kids are right now. So we've learned some lessons from it, but we also felt like we did a decent job of being ready.
You can never have enough time to prepare for the triple option, though, right? That's got to be crazy.
Never.
Very good, Coach Ballard. Thank you very much for taking some time to join us today.
Anytime. Thank you guys for what you do for high school sports. We sure appreciate your time.
Thanks, Coach.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Ballard of Tuttle doing a great job out there in his second season with the Tigers. Really curious to see what they're going to be able to do in 4A this year. I think they're a top 10 team. That opening week win really kind of solidified that. I think they've got some good things on the horizon for that program.
Yeah, I was impressed. I mean, they've got some good players. They got both Anthony brothers up front, Jason Biddy. Dalton Cooper had a really good game on defense. I think it's a team that's going to make some noise in 4A.
Now, you were out there and talked about the atmosphere out there. I was at Bethany for the Bethany Lone Grove game. It was much the same way. Bethany folks were fired up. Lone Grove traveled well. They had both sides of bleachers filled up, and the little hill over behind the end zone had people laying out blankets out there and just having a blast with this whole thing. I think that week 0 is going to be a really big deal. I think we're going to see some really fun matchups as we go forward with this, and people start to kind of enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be fun as long as we get these good matchups. I was talking with Ed Shakely, the OSSAA, yesterday, and he said that there's one school, he didn't say who, that was already talking about trying to make it where their fall break is the game that they moved as week 0. And I think that's a fantastic idea. Give the kids, a couple of days off with everyone else is out of school. You might lose attendance. You might have some problems getting some kids to the game and stuff. So that just makes it a lot easier.
Well, and that's I think a great idea for Oklahoma City public schools. Now the caveat with that is that they would have to move the All City Preview, their conference preview tournament that they do, scrimmage tournament, a week earlier, and give up some of their other scrimmages. But when you look at their calendar with the year-round school, they start August 1st, then they have a really long fall break in October where they're gone for 2 weeks. They lose a lot of kids during that time because it's maybe they don't have a way to get to practice for those 2 weeks when there's no school buses running, things like that cause issues for guys. And talking to like U.S. Grant and Capitol Hill, things were going well for them last year. Then they hit fall break, and a lot of kids stopped showing up. And then once school got back in, they had missed 2 weeks, and they decided they didn't want to go back to playing football. So they could make some changes in the schedule and maybe make things easier for some of their kids to stay active and stay involved in the sport. So I think that it's going to be a good thing all the way around.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the future with it. I think Brad Ballard already told me they don't have his week 0 game planned next week, but I guess we'll see. They may change their mind. They may have liked it so much they want to change their mind. This one was kind of just happened to be worked out perfectly. They were going to scrimmage, and they both lost an opponent, so why not turn it into a game? And they split the gate, as we had in the paper this morning.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool, considering that they both lost what would have been a home game, and obviously they can't reciprocate and go back to Davis next year, so they split it. I thought that was a really cool idea and really good thinking on Tuttle's part.
Yeah, good job.
We'll get to week 1 here in just a little bit, but we had some interesting stuff with the OSSAA and Oklahoma City Public Schools that has been coming down for I guess about a month now, really. That's going to impact a lot of sports this year, football for the next 2 years after this season. But Jacob, take us into a little bit of, if you can briefly explain what's been going on with Oklahoma City Public Schools, Emerson High School, and the OSSAA impacting Capitol Hill and Claremore in the classification system.
Well, sit back and enjoy the ride because I've been trying to briefly explain it in the paper for a month. Basically, what happened is they use the ADM to determine the classifications. This is the year they determine football for the next 2 years. Claremore ends up in 6A by just almost 3 students on average above Capitol Hill. Somehow, and I've yet to figure out how, Claremore discovers that Emerson High School has been sending athletes to other OKCPS schools to compete. It's an illegal participation issue, but also Emerson was not a member of the OSSAA at the time. I didn't realize Emerson even existed at the time. It was all new to me, but it's an alternative school that the OKCPS schools feed into for different issues ranging from girls who are pregnant to kids who fall behind in class for certain reasons, just all different kinds of reasons. Since then, the OSSAA yesterday finally got to approve the ADM after the board wanted Emerson to provide, or OKCPS to provide numbers of Emerson of ADM of who goes for what part of their ADM goes to what school, and that moved U.S. Grant up to Division I in football, moved Capitol Hill up to Division II in football, put Claremore down in 5A, kept Enid in Division II. That's the short gist of it. It was a long process. Emerson is now also a member of the OSSAA and is co-oping with Seaworth in the future, to where it doesn't affect anything with their ADM being added on because their ADM is over 500 students. So that's where we stand. The big thing is it changes the landscape of 6A football for both divisions now. Now both of them are going to have a district with 7 teams. It's going to have to find either another non-district opponent or have a bye week.
Yeah, it's a really complicated issue that's going to, we went through the whole process of getting the football districts for the 16 and 17 seasons laid out back at the end of July. and now they've got to rework all of that in 5A, 6A1, and 6A2. So it really changes things. I know a lot of the 6A teams aren't a big fan of the fact that they're going to have bye weeks in the district season now. A lot of schools are having to deal with that. I don't like it either, but it is what it is. And really with week 0 that we just talked about, I think that this opens up the possibility for some really fun 6A games if coaches want to take a chance at doing something like that. But anyway, but the more immediate impact though is when you start looking at maybe basketball this season, with Claremore dropping from 6A to 5A. They're obviously a far more competitive team at the 5A level, and they're going to be in 5A for all other sports. Volleyball and cross country right off at the bat here, and then all of the winter sports as well.
Yeah, that really changes the landscape of sports like that. It's not going to affect baseball, where Claremore is usually pretty good. They've got their – actually, no. I think it might affect it because of they're determining the districts next week as well
they're
for that.
So districts for this coming baseball season next
the next
spring.
2 years would be baseball also, that's an impact too because Claremore is a perennial state tournament team in 5A or in 6A the last couple of years, and so they can really wreak some havoc here and getting back into 5A.
Right, because they'll drop down now for the next 2 years because of the district cycle. So, and like you said, with Emerson actually becoming a member of the OSSAA now, this whole issue goes away next year, and you're going to see the numbers at Grant, Capitol Hill, and all the other schools that were impacted by this dropping down once those Emerson kids are pulled back out of their ADM in the next year's cycle. So,
but I still believe Capitol Hill is going to be in 6A though, because the way Keith Steiner, the OKCPS athletic director, talked was that they were already going to be in 6A next year, probably anyways.
Yeah, their numbers have been on the incline here lately anyway, so that wouldn't be surprising at all. Obviously, they're still independent for the rest of this football cycle through 16 and 17, but then when we get to the 18 and 19 football cycle, if they're in 6A, then that's going to be really a tough situation for them when they go back into district play. All right, let's move on now. That whole thing is not by any means finished.
No.
It's, like I said, it's been going on for a while, but we've still got the redistricting, the approval of the districts, and the ADM, and all of that. So
we've got to address the illegal participation, I think.
Right. Yeah. That's going to be a nightmare to try to figure out, considering how tough it's been just to figure out what kids are supposed to go to what schools. So that's going to be difficult as well. So yeah, this situation not over by a long shot, but we'll see where it goes from here. Let's wrap it up with some week 1 thoughts. I put out the top 10 games of the week, and it was really tough narrowing down those 10 games because there are so many good rivalry games that could end up being just phenomenal. But when you look at them on the surface, it's tough to tell just what kind of competitive level those games are going to have. So juggling all of that and weighing it against each other is pretty difficult. But the rivalry games are what make week 1 so much fun, I think. You've been to I know quite a few of them. I've been to a lot of good ones over the years. What is it about the rivalry games that makes them so special at the 6A level?
I think it's just the pride. I think it's, the bragging rights for a year. I kept getting this answer when I was talking to some kids yesterday. Just it's the pride. It's, we get to say, hey, we beat you. We're the city champs. They get to print a T-shirt. Some of them get trophies. There's a trophy for some of these rivalries, and I think it's just a lot of that. It was different back in the 90s for some of these rivalries when the schools started splitting from one school because those kids grew up together and already knew each other. Then they go to a different school and they really want to beat each other. But I still think there's that sense of pride.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of these rivalry games are at the 6A level have really just been born within the last 20 or 25 years. Whereas I'm going to be out at Yukon Mustang on Friday, and that is one that goes back a long time. Those are two neighbor schools that have disliked each other for decades. I remember all the Mustang kids showing up in their Yukon shirts and writing it, shoe polishing that all over their buses as they're pulling into the stadium and all of that stuff. So a lot of fun. I love the rivalry games. We have some that carry on to week 2, some that because of districts have been moved off of the non-district schedule and are being played late in the year. Chandler Stroud is a really fun one that has been moved into the district schedule this season. But really looking forward to the rivalry games. Rivalries aside, what game excites you the most this week, Jacob?
I've been looking at that Deer Creek Stillwater game locally. Yeah. I think Deer Creek has a chance. This is their last year in 5A. They've got a ton of talent, dealing with some injuries, but they've got a ton of talent where they went 0-3 in the 6A non-district portion of their schedule last year, and I think this year, they can go 2-1, maybe 3-0, but I'm thinking 2-1, and this is a good start.
And if things keep progressing, they're going to be really fun to watch in 6A2 next year when they make the move up to Class 6A. But for me, I looked through a lot of different games. Like I said, I'll be at Yukon Mustang, which is being a Yukon guy. I love being out there. I love the atmosphere of that game and the passion in it. But from a purely competitive standpoint, there were 3 games that jumped out at me that I would love to be able to see just to see this week. One being Midwest City at Booker T. Washington.
Oh yeah,
I was at that game when I was at Midwest City last year, and it was phenomenal. I think it'll be just as good up at Booker T this year. I would really like to see South Lake Carroll coming up and playing Union on Friday night.
That's a big time matchup.
I think that's a really fun game. And then the dark horse game for me is Ardmore and Ada. I think that has a chance to be just a phenomenal game. I think that that's going to be a really good rivalry over the coming years. I mean, it's been a good rivalry, but I think that it's going to be 2 elite teams in their classes battling it out for a while now. Got Josh Newby coaching at Ardmore. Wade Stanley takes over at Ada. I think that program is going to be a perennial power in 4A under Wade Stanley. I think that's just going to be a phenomenal game. All right, Jacob, that's going to do it for our Week 1 podcast. We'll be back next week. Recap Week 1, look ahead to Week 2, and we got some more fun games, some more rivalry games, and we'll check back in on this OSSA situation, see what's new there. Lots of stuff going on. Football season is here for real, so it's exciting times here on the News OK Varsity Podcast. Check us back next week.